The first gunshot came before Rachel Lane could finish, saying, "I love you." It cracked through the ballroom set at Vescari House, sharp enough to silence the orchestra recording and send 300 candles trembling in their silver stands. For one suspended second, nobody moved. The cameras kept rolling. Snow struck the 30-foot windows behind Rachel, turning the Boston night into a wall of white. Across from her, Nikolai Vescari did not flinch. He stood in a black tuxedo beneath the painted ceiling, one hand resting at Rachel's waist, exactly where the director had placed it. He was not an actor, yet the studio had insisted he play himself in the final scene. No one had dared question why the most feared man in New England's criminal world had financed a movie about a widowed crime lord who fell in love with his daughter's teacher. Rachel had questioned it. That was why Nikolai had been watching her, as if every line she spoke belonged to him. A second shot shattered the glass above the western doors. "Down," Nikolai said, his arm locked around Rachel before she understood the word. He drove her behind the marble bar as armed men poured into the ballroom. The actors screamed. A camera toppled. Somewhere near the staircase, the director shouted for everyone to run, but the estate's steel security doors slammed shut with a sound like a prison ceiling. Rachel landed against Nikolai's chest. He covered the back of her head with one hand while drawing a compact pistol with the other. "You said the weapons on set were fake," she whispered. "Those are." Another round struck the bar above them, spraying crystal across his shoulder. "Theirs aren't." He rose just enough to fire twice, calm, precise, emotionless. Then he pulled Rachel closer, as two of his guards dragged a wounded lighting technician toward cover. Rachel had known Nikolai was dangerous before she accepted the role. Everyone did. His name was spoken quietly in courtrooms, hospitals, and waterfront bars. He owned shipping companies, security firms, and half the buildings along the harbor. Men who laughed at federal subpoenas lowered their eyes when he entered a room. But none of that explained the screenplay. None of it explained why the heroine had Rachel's childhood nickname, or why, in yesterday's scene, Nikolai had stopped filming when she recited a bedtime rhyme her mother used to whisper before she disappeared. "Rachel," a little girl's voice came from the grand staircase. Nikolai changed. He did not soften, not exactly. But something violent entered his stillness. 7-year-old Elena Vescari stood halfway down the stairs in a white nightgown, clutching a stuffed rabbit to her chest. She was supposed to be asleep in the East Wing. She had not spoken since the night her mother died 2 years earlier. Not to doctors, not to therapists, not even to her father. Now she stared directly at Rachel. A masked man appeared behind her. Nikolai moved before anyone else breathed. He crossed the ballroom through broken glass, firing once toward the railing. The intruder ducked. Elena screamed without sound and lost her footing. Rachel ran. She caught the child at the bottom of the stairs, just as Nikolai reached them. His body turned into a shield around both of them. Bullets struck the stone column behind his back. Rachel felt his breath against her temple, controlled but too fast. "Take her," he ordered. "I'm not leaving you." His eyes found hers gray and merciless. That was not a request. A hidden panel opened beneath the staircase. One of Nikolai's men pushed Rachel and Elena through it. Nikolai backed in after them, firing until the door sealed and darkness swallowed the gunfire. Emergency lights flickered on inside a narrow underground corridor. Elena clung to Rachel so tightly that her small fingers hurt. Nikolai crouched in front of his daughter, checking her face, her arms, her breathing. His hands were steady. Only the blood on his cuff revealed that the world above them had touched him at all. "Elena," he said, quieter than Rachel had ever heard him speak. "Look at me." The child looked past him at Rachel. Her lips trembled. Then, for the first time in 2 years, Elena Vescari spoke. "Mama." The word echoed through the corridor. Nikolai went completely still. Rachel's heart seemed to stop with him. Elena reached up and touched Rachel's cheek, tears filling her eyes. Mama came back. Rachel could not speak. She had never met Elena before the production began. She had never seen the child's mother. At least, that was what she had been told. Nikolai rose slowly. The tenderness vanished from his face, replaced by something colder than anger and far more frightening than suspicion. He looked at Rachel as though she had just opened a grave. Then he turned to his men. "Lock down the bunker," he said. "No one speaks to her. No one lets her near Elena." Rachel stared at him. "What is happening?" Nikolai's gaze dropped to the tiny silver locket hanging at her throat, the only thing Rachel's mother had left behind. For the first time since she had met him, fear moved through his eyes. Not fear of the attack, fear of her. "You were never supposed to wear that here," he said. The corridor lights flickered again. Somewhere behind the steel wall, the mansion shook, and Rachel finally understood that the movie had not been written for her. It had been written about her. Rachel had seen fear before, but never in a man like Nikolai Vescari. The fear in his eyes was not panic. It was recognition, the look of someone who had prepared for every threat except the one standing in front of him wearing a silver locket. The bunker doors sealed behind them. "Mama," Elena whispered again, clinging to Rachel. Nikolai ordered a guard to take the child to the medical room. But Elena refused to let go. Rachel held her tighter. "You do not understand what is happening," Nikolai said. "Then explain it." He glanced at the security monitors, where masked attackers moved through smoke in the ballroom. "Who are they?" Rachel asked. "People who were not supposed to know you were here." Nikolai held out his hand to Elena. She did not move. For a second, the feared man looked like a father locked outside his child's heart. Rachel followed Elena into the bunker's private clinic, a windowless suite of dark oak, leather and hidden weapons. A doctor examined Elena while Nikolai issued orders into his phone. "Seal the North Road. Check every vehicle. I want names before sunrise." His voice never rose. That made it worse. When the doctor and guards left, Nikolai shut the door. "Where did you get the locket?" "It belonged to my mother." "Her name, Margaret Lane." Something changed in his face. "When did she give it to you?" "She didn't. I found it after she disappeared." "How old were you?" 11. Rachel closed her hand around the silver pendant. "You already knew that, didn't you? You knew enough about me to put my life into a screenplay." He said nothing. That silence pulled her back 3 months, to the ordinary life she had been desperate enough to leave. Before Vescari House, Rachel lived above a laundromat in Dorchester, worked as a substitute elementary school teacher, and spent her evenings auditioning for roles that usually went to women with better agents. Her mother's abandoned house in Worcester was weeks from foreclosure. The roof leaked and the furnace barely worked. But Rachel kept paying for it because selling felt like admitting Margaret would never return. Then a casting invitation arrived in a black envelope. The offer was for a private film called The Winter Widow. 3 weeks of work, $200,000. Rachel assumed it was fraudulent until a sedan took her to a private theater beneath a Boston hotel. There was no casting assistant and no line of actresses, only a camera, one spotlight, and Nikolai sitting alone in the darkness. He did not introduce himself. Read page 17. The scene showed a teacher helping a silent child fold paper birds. Rachel stopped when she reached the line. "Your mother did not leave because she stopped loving you." It was the exact sentence Margaret had written inside Rachel's final birthday card. Rachel looked toward the dark seats. "Who wrote this?" "Continue." "No." Nikolai stepped into the light. He wore charcoal, not black, with no tie. His face was severe, made more striking by restraint. He looked like a man who considered emotion a weakness that could be used against him. "You need the money," he said. Rachel's shame became anger. "You investigated me." "Yes, at least you're honest." Honesty is useful when time is limited. She should have left. Instead, she asked why he had chosen her. Nikolai studied her for so long that the theater seemed to shrink around them. "Because no one else can play her." He never explained who her was. Now, inside the bunker, Rachel understood the answer had never been about talent. Elena's fingers curled around hers. Nikolai noticed. "Tomorrow, you will leave the estate." Rachel stared at him. "You spent months bringing me here, and now you want me gone." "Yes, because Elena spoke, because you are no longer safe. I wasn't safe before I arrived. You were safer than you are now." "Did you know Elena would think I was her mother?" His silence answered too much. Rachel stood. "Show me a photograph of Elena's mother." "No, then I'm not leaving." A dangerous calm settled over his face. "You misunderstand your position." "No. You think money gives you the right to steal my memories, watch me through hidden cameras, and decide when I enter or leave your daughter's life. I decide everything concerning my daughter, then decide to tell the truth." Neither moved. Nikolai's gaze dropped briefly to Rachel's mouth. He raised one hand toward the locket, but stopped before touching her. "Some truths," he said quietly, "destroy the people who ask for them." Rachel held his stare. "Then you should have cast someone more obedient." The clinic door opened. One of Nikolai's men entered, carrying a scorched leather folder recovered from the set. "We found this in the director's office." Rachel recognized the script inside. Her script. Nikolai took it, but one loose page fell near Rachel's feet. She reached it before he could stop her. At the top were the words "Deleted, Scene 42." The scene described an 11-year-old girl waking during a thunderstorm, finding her mother's bedroom empty, and discovering a silver locket beside a hidden note. Rachel read the final sentence. "Do not look for me. The men who took your sister will come for you too." Her hands began to shake. No note had ever been found in her mother's room, and until that moment, Rachel had never known she had a sister. Rachel read the final sentence 3 times. "The men who took your sister will come for you too." The words did not become less impossible. She looked up from the scorched page. "Who was my sister?" Nikolai took the paper from her hand. "Answer me. The bunker is not secure enough for this conversation. You built it beneath a fortress, and someone still entered my house tonight." He handed the page to his guard. "Burn it." Rachel seized his wrist before the man could move. Every person in the room went still. Nikolai looked down at her hand. No one touched him without permission. Rachel could see that truth in the guards' faces. She refused to release him. "You will not destroy another piece of my life." His pulse remained steady beneath her fingers. "You think that page belongs to you?" he asked. "It describes me. It was written by a dead woman." "Then tell me her name." Elena whimpered from the examination bed. Rachel immediately released Nikolai and turned toward the child. The violence in the room seemed to disappear from her face as she crouched beside Elena. "Hey," Rachel whispered. "You're safe." Elena stared at her with huge grey eyes. "Don't go." The words were thin and uncertain, as though speaking caused pain. Nikolai stopped breathing. Rachel held Elena's hand. "I'm right here. Promise." Rachel glanced at Nikolai. His expression warned her not to make promises inside his house. She made one anyway. "I promise I won't leave tonight." Elena nodded and closed her eyes. Nikolai ordered everyone out except the doctor. Then he led Rachel into the adjoining command room, where surveillance screens covered an entire wall. The ballroom appeared on 6 monitors. Broken chandeliers lay across the floor. Vescari guards moved among abandoned cameras and overturned tables. 2 attackers were alive and restrained near the fireplace. Rachel noticed another screen. It showed the clinic. Elena slept while the doctor adjusted her blanket. "You watch your own daughter from here?" Rachel asked. "I watch every entrance to every room she occupies. She isn't an entrance. She is the only vulnerability my enemies have ever been able to identify." Rachel studied him. "And now they think I'm another one." Nikolai did not deny it. A man entered and placed a tablet on the desk. The attackers used biometric access, stolen from the production manager. 3 were connected to the Baranov family. The others carried no identification. "What did they want?" Nikolai asked. We intercepted one transmission. They were ordered to take the actress alive. Rachel felt cold despite the heat of the bunker. Nikolai's eyes sharpened. Which actress? The guard looked at her. Nikolai picked up the tablet and read the message himself. His face remained calm, but his hand tightened around the device. Move every member of the production into the East Barracks, he ordered. No phones. No departures. Question them separately. You can't imprison an entire film crew, Rachel said. I can. They were attacked too. One of them opened my gates. He turned to the guard. Production resumes at 8. Rachel stared at him. You're continuing the movie. The attack was meant to force you into the open. So your solution is to put me back under lights? My solution is to control what our enemies believe. I'm not bait. No, he said. Bait is left unprotected. By sunrise, snow had buried the damaged courtyard beneath a clean white surface. The estate looked peaceful again, but armed men stood along the roofline, and black salves blocked every road. Rachel was taken to her room under guard. Her phone had disappeared. Her windows would not open. A camera above the fireplace followed her when she crossed the room. She dragged a chair beneath it and covered the lens with a silk scarf. 30 seconds later, Nikolai entered without knocking. Remove it. Get out. This is my house. This is my bedroom. You are being targeted, and watching me change clothes will help. His jaw tightened. The camera records without audio. Female security officers monitor this floor. How considerate. Rachel stepped closer. Did you know I had a sister before the audition? Yes. The answer hit harder because he gave it so easily. Was she Elena's mother? Nikolai's expression became unreadable. Rachel understood that she had asked the right question. Before she could press him, Elena appeared in the doorway, wearing a pale blue dress and holding 2 paper birds. The child offered one to Rachel. Nikolai immediately dismissed the guards and checked the corridor himself. Elena climbed onto the window seat. Rachel sat beside her and unfolded a sheet of paper from the desk. For the next hour, she taught Elena how to make wings that opened when the tail was pulled. Nikolai remained near the door, pretending to read messages while watching every movement. Elena spoke only 4 more words. Again, Blue, stay. And once, when Rachel laughed, Mama, Nikolai left the room. Rachel found him later in the glass conservatory behind the west wing. Snow covered the roof above him. He stood among dead winter roses with one hand braced against a stone column. You're angry at her, Rachel said. I am not angry at my daughter. You walked away when she called me her mother. His eyes turned toward her. You do not know what that word cost her. Then help me understand. I brought specialists from Zurich, London, and New York. They treated her like a damaged machine. You folded paper with her for an hour, and she spoke. That isn't my fault. No, it is mine. The admission surprised her. Rachel stepped closer. Why did you bring me here? Nikolai looked at her mouth again. The air between them tightened. He lifted his hand toward her cheek. For one dangerous second, Rachel thought he would touch her. Instead, he removed a tiny piece of blue paper from her hair. You should be afraid of me, he said. I am. Not enough. A voice called his name from the corridor. Nikolai stepped away as though distance could erase the moment. That night, Rachel woke to the sound of a woman singing. The melody came through the heating vent. It was the same lullaby her mother had sung during thunderstorms. Rachel followed it through the dark hallway to a locked room at the end of the private wing. The door stood slightly open. Inside, hundreds of photographs covered the walls. A woman with Rachel's face stood beside Nikolai on a stormy coastline. She wore Rachel's silver locket and held a newborn Elena against her chest. In another picture, Nikolai kissed her beneath the lights of a winter carnival. Rachel moved closer, unable to breathe. The final photograph was dated 3 days before the woman's death. Written across the bottom in Nikolai's handwriting were 5 words. Sophia knew Rachel was alive. Rachel heard the door close behind her. She did not turn. The photographs filled the room like witnesses. Sophia laughing beside a black car in the rain. Sophia asleep with Elena curled against her chest. Sophia standing at the edge of a frozen lake while Nikolai watched her from several feet away, his expression less guarded than Rachel had ever seen it. Every image carried Rachel's face. Not a resemblance, her face. The same shape of the mouth, the same slight arch in the left eyebrow. Even the small pale mark near the chin that Rachel had covered with makeup since childhood. Only Sophia's eyes were different, softer, as if she had once believed the world could be trusted. "Get away from the wall," Nikolai said. Rachel turned slowly. He stood in the doorway, without a jacket, his white shirt open at the throat. For the first time, he looked unprepared. "You kept this room untouched," she said. His eyes moved to the photograph in her hand. "Put it down. She knew I was alive. Rachel, she knew my name." Nikolai crossed the room and took the photograph from her, but Rachel did not step back. "Was she my sister?" He placed the picture face down on the table. "You entered a locked room. The door was open. It has not been open in 2 years. Then maybe someone wanted me to find it. That stopped him." Rachel looked toward the hidden speaker near the ceiling. The lullaby had gone silent. "Who played the music?" Nikolai pressed a button near the door. No response. His calm became dangerous. He called security and ordered the entire wing searched. Within seconds, armed guards moved through the corridor. Rachel watched him take control of the room, the hallway, the entire estate. Yet he still would not answer the only question that mattered. She picked up another photograph. Sophia was wearing the silver locket. Rachel touched the identical pendant at her own throat. "My mother told me this belonged to her family. It did. Then Sophia was my sister." Nikolai looked at Rachel for a long moment. "Yes." The word made the room tilt. Rachel sat on the edge of a velvet chair because her knees no longer felt reliable. "Twin, yes. Identical. Yes." She let out a broken laugh. "You knew the first time you saw me. I knew before the audition. How long?" 7 months. And you said nothing. I was confirming the records. You wrote a movie." Sophia wrote most of it. Rachel looked up sharply. Nikolai opened a drawer and removed a stack of leather-bound journals. Each bore Sophia's initials. "She wanted the truth documented," he said. "Not for the public, for Elena. So you turned her life into entertainment. I turned it into a trap." Rachel stared at him. "The production drew out the people who trafficked both of you." Nikolai continued. "We leaked enough of the story to make them believe Sophia left evidence behind. And I was the bait. You were never supposed to be exposed. You put my face on every camera in this house. I controlled the cameras. Until tonight, his silence confirmed it." Rachel stood. "Tell me everything." Before Nikolai could answer, the alarm on his phone sounded. One of the guards entered. "Sir, we have a breach." "Where?" "Not inside the estate, online." He handed over a tablet. A video was spreading across every major entertainment site. Rachel recognized the footage immediately. It had been filmed during the ballroom scene, minutes before the attack. The clip showed Nikolai holding her at the waist while she delivered the scripted line, "I would rather be ruined by you than saved by anyone else." The video cut before the director called the scene. Then it switched to hidden footage from the conservatory. Nikolai standing close to Rachel, his hand lifting toward her face. His eyes dropping to her mouth, the headline appeared beneath them. "Mafia widower casts dead wife's double as secret lover." Rachel felt the blood leave her face. The article included her full name, her childhood address, and details about her missing mother. It claimed Rachel had been living at Vescari house for months, replacing Sophia in Nikolai's bed and in Elena's life. Comments multiplied beneath the video. Some called her a gold digger. Others called her insane. One message contained a photograph of Rachel leaving the school where she used to teach. Below it was a single sentence. "We know where the children are." Nikolai's expression changed. The room seemed to darken around him. "Find the source," he said. "We are tracing it. Trace faster." Rachel took the tablet. They're threatening the school. I saw. My students are there. Not anymore. She looked at him. I had the building evacuated 4 minutes ago, he said. Every child is being moved under police escort. You already knew. I receive alerts when your name appears in connection with a threat. How long have you been monitoring me? He did not answer. Rachel understood. 7 months? Longer. The confession felt intimate in the worst possible way. You watched me before you knew who I was? I suspected. You followed me. I protected you. You studied me. I kept you alive. Rachel stepped toward him. You do not get to rename obsession as protection. A flicker of anger crossed his face. You think the difference matters to men who would use a school full of children to reach you. It matters to me. Nikolai took the tablet from her and turned to his guards. Prepare the press room. Rachel frowned. What are you doing? Ending the story they wrote. 20 minutes later, she stood behind a locked door while reporters crowded the estate's underground conference hall. Nikolai had invited no one, yet every news network was connected remotely. He walked to the podium alone, no lawyer, no statement in his hand. Just the black Vescari signet ring and the stillness of a man about to make someone regret being born. My relationship with Rachel Lane is not a scandal, he said into the cameras. It is not a rumor, and it is not permission for anyone to threaten her, a reporter shouted. Is she your mistress? Nikolai's gaze never moved. She is under my protection. Did you cast her because she resembles your wife? Another voice asked whether Rachel was replacing Sophia as Elena's mother. Nikolai's jaw tightened. Rachel expected him to end the broadcast. Instead, he said, Anyone who humiliates her publicly will answer to me privately. The room fell silent. It was not a denial. It was a warning. Then he placed both hands on the podium. Rachel Lane is not Sophia Vescari's replacement. His eyes shifted toward the camera that fed directly into the room where Rachel stood. She is Sophia's twin sister. Every reporter erupted at once. Rachel could barely hear them, because in that same instant, Elena appeared beside her, holding one of Sophia's journals. The child opened it to a page marked with Rachel's photograph. Beneath the picture, Sophia had written, If Nikolai finds her, he must never tell her why Elena needs her. Rachel took the journal from Elena with numb hands. The page was dated 6 months before Sophia's death. If Nikolai finds her, he must never tell her why Elena needs her. Below the sentence was a medical drawing of a child's heart. Through the glass wall, Nikolai was still controlling the press conference he had just detonated. He had told the world Rachel was Sophia's twins before telling Rachel why she had been brought into his house. Elena touched her sleeve. Are you mad? Rachel knelt. Not at you. At Papa? Yes. Elena pressed the journal against Rachel's chest. She was mad at him too. Nikolai entered moments later and dismissed everyone with one look. Rachel held up the book. What does Elena need from me? His gaze moved to his daughter. Elena, go with Marta. No. The child stepped behind Rachel. It was a tiny act, but it cut him. She stays until you explain why Sophia was afraid you would use me, Rachel said. Nikolai closed the steel shutters over the snowy windows. Elena has a hereditary vascular condition, he said. It causes progressive organ failure. Sophia carried the same mutation. Is Elena dying? Not today. That is not an answer, no. Elena gripped Rachel's dress. The treatments are failing, Nikolai continued. She needs a living donor with an extremely close genetic match. Rachel already knew. Me, you are the only confirmed match. She turned to Elena. Sweetheart, go with Marta for 5 minutes. You'll stay, I promise. When the door closed, Rachel slapped Nikolai. The sound cracked across the room. A red mark appeared on his cheek, but he did not touch her. You found me months ago, she said. You investigated my childhood, bought my mother's house, copied my memories into a screenplay, and offered me money I could not refuse. Yes, you did it because you needed my organs. No, do not lie now. I brought you here because the medical council needed testing. I did not know what the procedure could cost you. You knew enough to hide it. Sophia made me promise. Rachel opened the journal. Why? She believed you had already lost enough to this family. Nikolai unlocked a cabinet and placed a medical file on the table. Inside were genetic maps, blood analyses, and surgical estimates bearing Rachel's name. Some were dated before her audition. One sentence had been highlighted: donor mortality risk. Significant. How significant? His jaw tightened. 38%. The room became soundless. And you still brought me here. I intended to ask for your consent after confirming the match. You filmed me holding Elena. You let her become attached before giving me a choice. The attack was not planned. The rest was. Yes. Rachel let out a broken laugh. Every paper bird, every bedtime story, was it designed to make her need me? No, Sophia wrote those scenes from letters your mother sent her. She wanted Elena to know the aunt she had been denied. And if I refused, Nikolai said nothing. What would you have done? I do not know. That means you thought about forcing me. I thought about every way to keep my daughter alive. The answer frightened her more than a denial. You are exactly what people say. Probably worse. On the dark television, Rachel's face appeared beside Sophia's beneath the headline "Secret Twin Revealed." Rachel caught Nikolai's wrist before he could turn it off. Did you ever look at me and see me? Something shifted in his eyes. I tried not to, because I look like her. Because you do not. Rachel stared at him. Sophia lowered her eyes when she was afraid. He said, You raise your chin, she asked permission before entering a room. You walk through locked doors and demand answers. She spent years learning how to survive me. His gaze dropped to Rachel's mouth. You make me wonder whether I deserve to. The confession hung between them, dangerous and unfinished. Nikolai lifted one hand. This time his fingers touched the pale mark beside her chin. The contact was barely there, but Rachel's heart reacted as if he had pulled her against him. Then the door opened. A doctor entered without waiting. Mr. Vescari. Elena collapsed. Nikolai turned. Every trace of desire vanished. They ran to the clinic. Elena lay beneath white lights, colorless and still, while machines screamed around her. Rachel reached the bed first. Nikolai gripped the rail on the opposite side so hard his knuckles whitened. Elena's eyes opened for 1 second. Mama, she breathed. The doctor looked at Rachel and Nikolai. We are out of time. Rachel stared at the child, then at the man who had manipulated every step that brought her there. What happens if I agree? She asked. Nikolai answered. Elena may live, and me, for the first time, the feared Mafia Boss could not speak. That silence was the answer. Before Rachel could respond, every light in the clinic turned red. A security alert replaced Elena's heart monitor on the wall screen. A live camera showed 3 black SUVs stopping beyond the estate gates. Across the image appeared a message addressed to Nikolai. Sophia died to keep the secret. Rachel will die if the child lives. Nikolai read it once. Then he drew his weapon and stepped between Rachel and the door. Rachel took the journal from Elena with numb hands. The page was dated 6 months before Sophia's death. If Nikolai finds her, he must never tell her why Elena needs her. Below the sentence was a medical drawing of a child's heart through the glass wall. Nikolai was still controlling the press conference he had just detonated. He had told the world Rachel was Sophia's twin before telling Rachel why she had been brought into his house. Elena touched her sleeve. Are you mad? Rachel knelt. Not at you. At Papa? Yes. Elena pressed the journal against Rachel's chest. She was mad at him too. Nikolai entered moments later and dismissed everyone with one look. Rachel held up the book. What does Elena need from me? His gaze moved to his daughter. Elena, go with Marta. No. The child stepped behind Rachel. It was a tiny act, but it cut him. She stays until you explain why Sophia was afraid you would use me, Rachel said. Nikolai closed the steel shutters over the snowy windows. Elena has a hereditary vascular condition, he said. It causes progressive organ failure. Sophia carried the same mutation. Is Elena dying? Not today, That is not an answer. No, Elena gripped Rachel's dress. The treatments are failing, Nikolai continued. She needs a living donor with an extremely close genetic match. Rachel already knew. Me, you are the only confirmed match. She turned to Elena. Sweetheart, go with Marta for 5 minutes. You'll stay, I promise. When the door closed, Rachel slapped Nikolai. The sound cracked across the room. A red mark appeared on his cheek, but he did not touch her. You found me months ago, she said. You investigated my childhood, bought my mother's house, copied my memories into a screenplay, and offered me money I could not refuse. Yes, you did it because you needed my organs. No, do not lie now. I brought you here because the medical council needed testing. I did not know what the procedure could cost you. You knew enough to hide it. Sophia made me promise. Rachel opened the journal. Why? She believed you had already lost enough to this family. Nikolai unlocked a cabinet and placed a medical file on the table. Inside were genetic maps, blood analyses, and surgical estimates bearing Rachel's name. Some were dated before her audition. One sentence had been highlighted. Donor mortality risk significant. How significant? His jaw tightened. 38%. The room became soundless. And you still brought me here. I intended to ask for your consent after confirming the match. You filmed me holding Elena. You let her become attached before giving me a choice. The attack was not planned. The rest was. Yes. Rachel let out a broken laugh. Every paper bird, every bedtime story was it designed to make her need me. No, Sophia wrote those scenes from letters your mother sent her. She wanted Elena to know the aunt she had been denied. And if I refused, Nikolai said nothing. What would you have done? I do not know. That means you thought about forcing me. I thought about every way to keep my daughter alive. The answer frightened her more than a denial. You are exactly what people say, probably worse. On the dark television, Rachel's face appeared beside Sophia's beneath the headline "Secret Twin Revealed." Rachel caught Nikolai's wrist before he could turn it off. Did you ever look at me and see me? Something shifted in his eyes. I tried not to. Because I look like her. Because you do not. Rachel stared at him. Sophia lowered her eyes when she was afraid. He said, You raise your chin. She asked permission before entering a room. You walk through locked doors and demand answers. She spent years learning how to survive me. His gaze dropped to Rachel's mouth. You make me wonder whether I deserve to. The confession hung between them, dangerous and unfinished. Nikolai lifted one hand. This time his fingers touched the pale mark beside her chin. The contact was barely there, but Rachel's heart reacted, as if he had pulled her against him. Then the door opened. A doctor entered without waiting. Mr. Vescari, Elena collapsed. Nikolai turned. Every trace of desire vanished. They ran to the clinic. Elena lay beneath white lights, colorless and still, while machines screamed around her. Rachel reached the bed first. Nikolai gripped the rail on the opposite side so hard his knuckles whitened. Elena's eyes opened for 1 second. Mama, she breathed. The doctor looked at Rachel and Nikolai. We are out of time. Rachel stared at the child, then at the man who had manipulated every step that brought her there. What happens if I agree? She asked. Nikolai answered, Elena may live, and me. For the first time, the feared Mafia Boss could not speak. That silence was the answer. Before Rachel could respond, every light in the clinic turned red. A security alert replaced Elena's heart monitor on the wall screen. A live camera showed 3 black SUVs stopping beyond the estate gates. Across the image appeared a message addressed to Nikolai. Sophia died to keep the secret. Rachel will die if the child lives. Nikolai read it once. Then he drew his weapon and stepped between Rachel and the door. The first explosion tore through the north gate. The clinic windows shook as steel shutters slammed over the estate. Nikolai looked only at Rachel. Stay behind me. She stepped beside Elena's bed. I'm not leaving her. You are leaving with her. Guards rushed in. Nikolai issued orders without raising his voice. Evacuate through the harbor tunnel. No convoy. Kill every camera feed except mine. One man hesitated. The council will see it as retreat. Nikolai turned his head. The man lowered his eyes. I am removing what matters, Nikolai said. Rachel heard the word. What, not who? You still talk about us like property. Argue with me when bullets are not entering my home. I've been arguing with you since before they did. They descended through a concealed elevator into the tunnels beneath Vescari house. Nikolai carried Elena himself. Blood spread beneath his shirt. The tunnel ended at a stone dock. A black speedboat waited in darkness. Gunfire erupted behind them. Nikolai pushed Rachel down as a round struck the wall above her. He covered her body, fired into the corridor, then lifted Elena into her arms. Get in the boat. What about you? I know my orders. He turned back. Rachel caught his coat. You do not get to bring me here. Lie to me. Make me care about your daughter, and then die before answering for it. That sounded almost like concern. It was a threat. For the first time, the corner of his mouth moved. A masked attacker appeared. Nikolai fired first and climbed into the boat as the dock lights died. The engine carried them through a hidden archway into the storm. Snow struck Rachel's face. Elena lay wrapped in Nikolai's coat while he drove with one hand and pressed the other to his ribs. You're hurt. It missed anything useful. Let me see. No. Rachel reached for him anyway. His fingers closed around her wrist. You should be afraid of touching me when I am angry. I'm more afraid of you bleeding out because you're too arrogant to admit you can be hurt. His grip loosened. The wound was shallow, but blood covered his side. You were lucky. I do not rely on luck. No. You rely on surveillance, threats, and people being too frightened to say no. You say no constantly, and somehow you're still alive. His eyes held hers. Exactly. They reached an abandoned customs warehouse on Boston Harbor. Beneath it was a hidden safe house with concrete walls, medical equipment, and no windows. The doctor stabilized Elena, but warned she might have only days. Rachel stayed until she slept. When she entered the corridor, Nikolai waited with his shirt open while a medic stitched his side. He dismissed the man before the work was finished. You should prepare to leave, he said. Rachel stared at him. Again? A plane will take you to Canada before dawn. And Elena, she stays. You need me. My daughter needs you. That is not the same thing. It was yesterday. Yesterday I believed I could control the risk. And now my enemies know who you are. Rachel folded her arms. So this is protection? Yes. It feels like abandonment. The word struck him. Nikolai stepped closer. You think I want you gone? I think you arrange everything so you never have to ask what I want. His face became still. You chose my role, my contract, and my movements. You watched me before I knew your name. You let Elena depend on me. Now you want to erase me because caring about me has become inconvenient. It has become fatal. For whom? For everyone. A commander entered carrying a phone. The Baranovs claim Rachel is Sophia's surviving heir and can challenge Elena's inheritance. I don't want it, Rachel said. They do not care, Nikolai replied. They need a fracture inside my family. The council has summoned you. They will protect Rachel, only if you publicly define her place in the Vescari family. Rachel saw the final line on the screen. The council would recognize her only as Nikolai's wife. Don't, she said. Nikolai remained silent. You cannot marry me to solve this. I can. You mean you can force everyone else to accept it? Yes. What about me? His silence answered. Hours later, they entered the council chamber beneath an abandoned Russian Orthodox church. Armed men stood beneath blackened icons. Rachel wore a borrowed black dress. Nikolai stood beside her with blood seeping through his bandage. The Baranov representative smiled. Is the actress a witness, an heir, or a replacement for your dead wife? Nikolai removed his signet ring. He took Rachel's left hand before the entire council. She is none of those things, Nikolai, Rachel warned. She is the woman under my name and protection. The chamber erupted. He placed the ring against her finger without sliding it on. "I will call her my future wife," he said, "because it is the only title these men are afraid to touch." Rachel's heart pounded. "And what do you call me when they are gone?" For the first time, Nikolai had no prepared answer. Then he said, so softly only she could hear, "The reason I no longer sleep." A gunshot shattered the church window. Nikolai pulled Rachel against his chest as the chamber exploded into chaos, and when he shielded her with his body, she finally felt his fear. Not of dying, of losing her. The church bells began ringing while gunfire moved through the nave. Nikolai forced Rachel behind the stone altar and covered her with his body. Dust fell from the painted saints above them. Men shouted in Russian and Italian. Somewhere near the entrance, stained glass shattered across the floor. Rachel pressed both hands against Nikolai's chest. "You're bleeding again. It is not mine. That is not comforting." A bullet struck the altar. Nikolai lowered his face until his mouth was near her ear. "When I move, stay with me. You just announced our engagement to a room full of criminals, and you chose now to discuss it. You didn't ask me. I was preventing your execution. You could have started with that." His eyes held hers despite the chaos. "Rachel, if we survive this, you may refuse me as loudly as you like. If—" a dark smile touched his mouth. "Stay close." He rose, fired twice, and pulled her through a narrow doorway behind the altar. 2 guards followed as the council chamber dissolved into smoke and betrayal. They escaped through the church crypt. Nikolai kept one hand around Rachel's wrist the entire way, not gentle, not painful, desperate enough that she felt every beat of his pulse. At the waiting SUV, he pushed her inside and climbed in after her. "Where is Elena?" Rachel demanded. "Safe. That word means nothing when you say it." Nikolai made a call. A secure screen appeared between the seats. Elena lay asleep inside the harbor clinic, surrounded by medical staff. Rachel leaned toward the image. Only then did Nikolai release her wrist. The drive back took them through snow-covered industrial streets. 3 black vehicles surrounded their SUV. Blue harbor lights flashed across Nikolai's face, making him look carved from ice. Rachel removed his signet ring from her finger. He had placed it there during their escape from the church. She set it between them. "I am not your future wife. I know. You told the council I was. They will protect the title even if you reject the man. And what happens when they discover it was a lie? By then, the people trying to kill you will be dead." Rachel looked out at the frozen harbor. "You always speak as if violence is the only language you trust. It is the only one my world consistently understands. That doesn't mean it should be the only one you use with me." Nikolai turned toward her. "What would you have me say? The truth. I have told you more truth in 3 days than I have told anyone in 10 years. Not enough." His eyes darkened. "There will never be enough for you. No, there will never be enough control for you." The SUV stopped beneath the safe house. Nikolai did not move. For one suspended moment, Rachel thought he might reach for her. Instead, he picked up the ring and closed his hand around it. Inside, Elena's condition had worsened. Her skin was pale beneath the hospital lights. Machines measured every fragile rhythm of her body. The doctors spoke quietly outside the room, but Rachel heard the words limited window and organ failure. She entered alone. Elena opened her eyes. "Did Papa save you?" Rachel sat beside her. "We saved each other. Are you marrying him?" Rachel almost laughed. "Your father says things when he's scared. He doesn't get scared. He does now." Elena considered that. "Will you stay if you marry him?" Rachel touched the child's hair. "I don't need to marry anyone to care about you. People leave when they don't have to stay." The words sounded too old for 7. Rachel understood then that Elena's silence had not begun with Sophia's death. It had begun with the terror that love could disappear without warning. "I'm here," Rachel said. "For how long?" Rachel could not answer. Later, she agreed to complete the donor testing. Nikolai stood behind the glass while doctors drew blood, scanned her heart, and mapped every risk. He did not enter. He watched with the stillness of a man observing his own sentence. The results arrived before dawn. Rachel was a near-perfect match. The surgeon spoke carefully. The procedure gives Elena a strong chance. But because of an undiagnosed vascular weakness in Rachel, the donor risk is higher than we projected. How high? Rachel asked. Potentially fatal. Nikolai took the file. No, the surgeon stopped. Rachel turned. You don't decide. The procedure is cancelled. Elena may die. So may you, I know. No, you do not. His control finally cracked. He swept the medical instruments from the steel table. Trays crashed across the floor. Everyone froze. Nikolai pointed toward the door. Leave. The doctors obeyed. Rachel remained. You brought me here to save her, she said. I was wrong. You manipulated me because you believed her life mattered more than mine. I was wrong. You do not get to change the rules because now losing me frightens you. His eyes burned. You think this is fear? Yes. Nikolai crossed the room. This is what fear becomes when a man like me has nowhere to put it. He stopped inches from her. I know how to eliminate an enemy. I know how to buy judges, close borders, and make entire families disappear. But I do not know how to stand outside an operating room while you die because of a plan I created. Rachel's breath caught. He lifted his hand toward her face, then stopped before touching her. Again, always almost. Then let me choose, she whispered. No, because you love me. The question stripped the room bare. Nikolai looked away first. I will not use that word to trap you. You already used marriage, to keep you alive. And this, to keep myself alive. The honesty hurt more than possession. Rachel stepped closer until his unfinished hand rested against her cheek. Nikolai closed his eyes. For one brief second, the feared man leaned into her touch like someone exhausted by carrying his own power. Then he pulled away. Guards were placed outside Rachel's room. Her medical file disappeared. The surgeon was ordered onto a plane. Nikolai slept in a chair across the hallway. Rachel saw him through the narrow opening beneath her door, still wearing his blood-stained shirt, a pistol across his lap. He had turned her room into a prison, and himself into its guard. At 3 a.m, Rachel used the production phone hidden inside Sophia's journal. She called the surgeon before his plane departed. This is Rachel Lane, a pause, Mr. Vescari cancelled the procedure. I know he will kill anyone who helps you. Then don't tell him. Rachel looked through the doorway at Nikolai sleeping outside. Schedule the operation. The surgeon hesitated. When? Rachel watched the man who had brought her there to save his daughter, and now feared the price too much to let her pay it. Tomorrow, she said, before he wakes. Rachel's operation was scheduled for 6 a.m. At 4:23, Nikolai discovered the empty chair outside her room. He entered without knocking. The bed had not been slept in. The bathroom window was sealed. Both guards were unconscious in the service corridor, breathing but unable to remember who had injected them. On the pillow lay Sophia's journal. A single line had been written beneath the final entry. You taught me that love means protecting someone. You never learned that it also means letting them choose. Nikolai read the sentence once. Then the entire safe house seemed to hold its breath. Find her, he said. His commander hesitated. Sir, the council has issued a second summons. Nikolai looked up. They have Elena's inheritance records, the man continued, and the original production files. They claim Rachel arranged the attack to replace Sophia and seize the Vescari holdings. Where? The Orpheum Theatre. The name was not accidental. The abandoned theatre had been where the Winter Widow was first developed. Sophia had once stood on its ruined stage and recorded her final testimony before her death. Nikolai had sealed the building afterward, preserving it like another grave. Now the council had reopened it. Outside, Boston disappeared beneath heavy snow. Black salves moved through empty streets toward the theatre, while Nikolai sat in silence, Sophia's journal resting beside his weapon. He did not ask whether Rachel had gone willingly. He knew she had that frightened him more than kidnapping. The Orpheum's gold marquee had collapsed years earlier. Snow blew through broken letters above the entrance. Inside, hundreds of candles burned along the aisles, illuminating armed representatives from every family allied to Vescari. On stage stood 3 objects: a steel case containing Elena's inheritance documents, the completed film reels of the Winter Widow and Rachel. She wore a dark coat over a hospital gown. 2 Baranov guards stood behind her. The surgeon was kneeling several feet away, his hands bound. Nikolai stopped at the center of the aisle. Rachel's eyes found his immediately. Not fear, anger. "You were supposed to be asleep," she said. "You drugged my guards. They'll recover. You left Elena. I left to save her." The Baranov patriarch stepped from the shadows. Viktor Baranov was old enough to remember Nikolai's father and cruel enough to believe age made him untouchable. "Touching," Viktor said. "The actress has learned her lines." Nikolai's gaze remained on Rachel. "Did they hurt you?" "No. Did they touch you, Nikolai? Answer me." One of the guards smiled. Nikolai fired before the man understood why. The bullet struck the floor beside his foot. The theater erupted in raised weapons. Rachel did not flinch. "Stop!" Nikolai lowered the pistol by 1 inch. Viktor laughed softly. "There it is, the weakness Sophia warned us about." He opened the steel case. Inside were birth certificates, trusts, and bloodline agreements granting Elena future control of the Vescari network. Rachel's genetic identity created a competing legal claim. With Sophia dead and Elena ill, the council could use Rachel to divide the empire. "Give Rachel to us," Viktor said. "The council will place her in protected custody until Elena's inheritance is settled." "No. Then prove she has no claim. She has already said she wants none. A woman can change her mind." Nikolai looked at the documents. For generations, Vescari heirs had killed brothers, betrayed wives and abandoned children to preserve those pages. His father had taught him that the family name was not an inheritance, it was a commandment. Viktor gestured toward the film reels. "And this production contains Sophia's testimony, names, payments, disappearances, enough to destroy every alliance in this room." Rachel stared at Nikolai. That's why the movie existed. He did not deny it. The film had never been entertainment. It was Sophia's revenge, hidden inside fiction. Every scene contained part of the trafficking network that separated Rachel from her twin and later murdered Sophia. Viktor smiled. "Give us the actress and the film. Elena keeps her inheritance, your empire survives." Rachel's face changed. She understood what Nikolai had been offered. Her life for his daughter's future, the choice he had once believed he could make. Nikolai climbed onto the stage. Guards tightened around Rachel, but he ignored them. He stopped before the steel case and lifted the first document. His family seal glowed red in the candlelight. "Nikolai," Rachel said quietly, "don't decide for me again." He looked at her. "I am not deciding for you." He carried the papers toward an iron brazier used in the final scene of the movie. "I am deciding what kind of father Elena will remember." He dropped the inheritance agreement into the fire. Viktor's smile disappeared. The parchment curled instantly. Nikolai added the trusts, the bloodline records, and every document proving his daughter's succession. The council shouted. One man stepped forward. "You are destroying 300 years of authority. Yes, your daughter will inherit nothing. She will inherit herself." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Nikolai lifted the first reel of the Winter Widow. "This film contains evidence against the Baranovs," Viktor warned. "Burn it, and Sophia's killers walk free." Nikolai looked at Rachel. The movie had brought her into his house. It contained Sophia's voice, Rachel's stolen memories, and the final proof supporting his empire's revenge. It was the most valuable weapon he possessed. He placed it in the fire. Flames climbed the celluloid with a violent hiss. Then came the second reel, the third, the photographs, the financial ledgers, the names of judges, politicians, and rival families he had controlled for years. One by one, Nikolai fed his power to the flames. "What are you doing?" Victor demanded. Nikolai turned to the council. "For most of my life, I believed blood created duty. Sophia died because of that belief. Rachel was brought here because of it. Elena was raised to become an heir before she was allowed to become a child." He removed the Vescari signet ring. No empire is worth another woman dying to preserve it. He threw the ring into the fire. Silence fell across the theater. Rachel stared at him as the symbol of his family blackened among the burning film. Nikolai crossed toward her. The guards stepped aside. He stopped close enough to touch her, but did not. "You wanted me to let you choose," he said. "Yes, then choose your life and Elena. I will find another way. There may not be one. Then I will sit beside her until the end." His voice broke on the final word. Only once, but Rachel heard it. So did everyone else. Nikolai Vescari, the man entire families feared, stood before the council with nothing left to threaten them except the truth. "I brought Rachel here believing Elena's blood gave me the right to risk her," he said. "I was wrong. Her life belongs to her. Any man who attempts to take it will lose his before he reaches the door." Victor drew his weapon. The theater lights went out. Gunfire exploded from the balcony. Nikolai pulled Rachel against him and covered her. As the stage vanished into smoke, his guards returned fire. Burning film rolled across the floor, throwing broken images of Rachel and Sophia onto the walls. Nikolai dragged Rachel behind the curtains. "Stay with me," she gripped his coat. "The surgeon, I'll get him. No more promises you cannot keep." He cupped her face with both hands. This time, he did not stop himself. His forehead touched hers. "I can survive losing the empire," he whispered. "I cannot survive walking into another room and finding you gone." Rachel's anger collapsed beneath the fear in his voice. For 1 second, she almost told him the truth, that the operating room was already prepared, that she had made her choice. Then an explosion tore through the backstage wall. Smoke separated them. Nikolai was thrown beneath falling timber while Rachel disappeared into the darkness. When he forced himself upright, the surgeon was gone. So was Rachel. On the floor lay her silver locket and a hospital bracelet marked with a single destination, St. Aurelia Private Medical Center Surgery, 6 a.m. Nikolai reached St. Aurelia at 5:58. The hospital rose above the harbor like a tower of glass, its upper floors glowing through the snow. 3 black SUVs blocked the emergency entrance. 2 more waited beside the loading dock. They did not belong to him. His commander looked through the windshield. "Baranov men. How many?" 20 inside, maybe more. Nikolai checked the hospital bracelet in his hand. 2 minutes until surgery. "Call the police anonymously. Report armed men on every floor. They may lock down the operating wing. They already have." Nikolai stepped from the SUV. His coat was torn from the theater explosion. Blood ran from a cut above his eyebrow, but his movements remained controlled. He entered through the loading dock with 4 men, while the rest of his guards drew the attackers toward the emergency entrance. The service corridor smelled of bleach and cold metal. On the security screen, Rachel lay beneath white surgical lights. Her face was uncovered. Her eyes were open. The surgeon stood beside her, while nurses prepared the machines. Rachel turned her head toward the camera, as though she could feel Nikolai watching. Then the feed went black. "Store it," he ordered. "We can't." Someone cut the operating floor. Gunfire sounded above them. Nikolai took the stairs. On the 7th floor, hospital staff crouched behind overturned carts. A nurse pointed toward the west wing. They took the surgical floor. "They're looking for a patient named Rachel Lane." Nikolai gave her his weapon and took another from his guard. "Get these people downstairs." "You're going up there?" "Yes. There are armed men, I know." The 8th floor doors opened onto darkness. Emergency lights cast the hall in red. Nikolai moved through smoke and shattered glass, firing only when necessary. He found 1 Baranov guard outside the blood bank and another near the elevators. The third man was holding Rachel's surgeon against the wall. "Where is she?" Nikolai asked. The attacker smiled. Already open, Nikolai's control disappeared. He crossed the corridor before the man could lift his weapon and drove him through the glass doors of an empty recovery room. The surgeon stumbled free. "Is she alive?" "Yes." "Has the procedure started?" "Yes." Nikolai gripped the surgeon's coat. "Stop it. We can't." "The graft has already been removed." For the first time in years, Nikolai looked lost. "And Elena, the transfer team is working one floor below. If we interrupt now, both patients could die." Nikolai released him. "Then finish." The surgeon stared at him. "The operating room has backup power, but the attackers shut down central oxygen." "How long?" 10 minutes. Nikolai turned to his commander. "Take the generator room. It's surrounded. Then remove the surround." Nikolai ran toward the surgical wing. 2 masked men stepped from the darkness. The exchange lasted seconds, but one round struck Nikolai high in the shoulder. He hit the wall, regained his footing, and kept moving. At the operating room doors, a final attacker waited with a detonator in his hand. "Victor said you would come yourself." Nikolai looked through the narrow window. Rachel lay motionless beneath the lights. "What does the device control?" he asked. "The oxygen lines. You detonate it, every patient on this floor dies. Then give me Sophia's remaining journal." Nikolai reached inside his coat. He had carried the journal from the safe house. It contained Sophia's final letter, the only piece of her he had not burned. The attacker held out his hand. Nikolai looked once more at Rachel. Then he dropped the journal into a metal disposal bin and fired into it. The pages caught immediately. The man stared in disbelief. Nikolai shot the detonator from his hand. His guards arrived seconds later. When the backup oxygen began flowing again, Nikolai stood outside the operating room, with blood soaking his shirt and Sophia's final words turning to ash behind him. The surgery lasted 3 hours. Elena survived the transplant. Rachel did not wake. Nikolai sat beside her bed in intensive care while machines breathed around them. The doctors had removed the bullet from his shoulder, but he refused pain medication and ignored every order to rest. He held Rachel's hand. Not tightly, as though even now he was afraid of taking something she had not chosen to give. "You were right," he said. Her eyes remained closed. "I called obsession protection because it made me sound less selfish." The heart monitor continued its slow rhythm. "I watched you for months. I knew which coffee shop you visited when you were lonely. I knew you stayed late at school to help children whose parents forgot them. I knew you talked to your mother's empty house as if she might answer." His thumb moved over Rachel's fingers. "I told myself I needed to know whether you were Sophia's sister." He looked at her pale face. "But I kept watching after I knew." Nikolai leaned forward. "Not because you looked like her." His voice lowered. "Because you did everything she was afraid to do. You challenged me. You refused my money. You made Elena laugh without asking what it would earn you. You looked at the worst parts of me and demanded I become something better." A tear fell onto Rachel's hand. Nikolai did not wipe it away. "I loved Sophia," he whispered, "but she survived me." His breathing broke. "You taught me to fear becoming the man she had to survive." Rachel's fingers moved. Barely, Nikolai froze, her eyes opened slowly. He stood so quickly the chair fell behind him. "Rachel." She looked toward the glass wall. Elena, alive, relief softened her face. Nikolai bent over the bed, his composure gone. "You had no right. I know, you left me, You chose to die. I chose to give her a chance." He closed his eyes. Rachel lifted one weak hand toward his face. He caught it and pressed it against his cheek. "You burned everything," she whispered. "Not enough. The empire gone, the movie gone. Sophia's journal?" His silence answered. Rachel studied him. "You finally destroyed something you loved for someone still alive." "For you." The words came without hesitation. "I love you." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Nikolai lowered his forehead to her hand. "I love you because you are not Sophia." I love you because you made me understand that protecting someone does not mean owning their choices. Her thumb brushed the cut above his eyebrow. You learned late. Yes, then learn the rest for Elena. Nikolai looked up. Rachel's monitor changed. A sharp alarm cut through the room. Doctors rushed in and pushed Nikolai back. Rachel's blood pressure collapsed as nurses surrounded the bed. He fought them until Rachel found his eyes through the moving bodies. Nikolai? Everyone stopped when she spoke. He reached her side. Rachel placed his hand against her heart. Don't raise her to inherit your fear, the monitor screamed. Nikolai gripped her hand. Rachel, stay with me. Her eyes remained on his. Raise her to be free. Then the rhythm beneath his palm began to disappear.